At 6:30, it's time to call this meeting of the Town of Harpswell Planning Board to order. To begin with, let's stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we have 4 items on the agenda tonight. We have 3 items of old business and 1 item of new business. There is also a second meeting of the planning board coming up next Wednesday because we had so many things that we couldn't get them all on the agenda without people packing their sleeping bags. So if you're interested in coming to the one on Monday as well, you're more than welcome to. I see that we do have a quorum. There are 5 members of the planning board. Amy Heibel, who is the chairman of the board, is not able to be with us this evening, so I'm going to ask Matt as one of the alternates to act as a voting board member tonight. So we do have a quorum. So, like I said, I'm Dan Hovack. I'm the acting chair. I'd like to have the other members of the board identify themselves.
Howard Levitan, Oars Island.
Lori Rice, Great Island.
You're wrong.
Okay.
I already identified myself.
All right. Courtney Snellings, Morris Island.
Matt Gilly, Cundy's Harbor.
Christine Donovan Hall, Oars Island.
Matthew James, I'm the town planner.
Okay, thank you very much. First matter of old business is the Malcolm C. Henry Family Trust. It is a subdivision amendment, consideration of an application to amend a property line within the Narrows Landing subdivision. Matt, if you would give us a summary, please.
This applicant came before us in September and was approved for a subdivision amendment to reduce the number of lots by combining a few. Unfortunately, there was a mistake made, and they are looking to move one of the property lines, new property lines, about 9 feet to the north. So their updated application reflects that, and they have a site plan showing where this new property line is going to be. So fairly small change, but because of it being a subdivision, it does have to come before us to get sorted out, and they will need to re-register this plan. So I don't know if the applicants have anything they'd like to add to that or not, but you can feel free to.
All right.
There's an error,
You can come right over here.
Would you please?
there's an error in communication between us and the survey crew. So the pin placement at the waterfront was sort of mission critical for the person who was purchasing this southerly lot. And it allowed access down to the waterfront because it starts out as a cliff and then rolls down towards the waterfront. And a little minor adjustment of that pin placement made a huge difference in terms of accessing the water. We'd placed a snow stake exactly where that pin was supposed to be, and there was a miscommunication between the surveyor and his crew, and for some reason, they decided to put the pin 7 or 8 feet further to the south of where it was supposed to be. And so this is basically just trying to shift that line at the waterfront back to where it was intended to be originally.
Good. Thank you. I think what we can do is take a look and start with the standards which we believe are not applicable to the application, and then open it up for discussion of the standards that are applicable to the application. As always, everything that is in the recommendations from the town planner have already been posted on the town website. So what we do is we just, rather than reading through an entirely long memo, we incorporate them by reference in the application. So as to factors subject only to state statutory review, I move that the planning board finds that the following state standards are met since they are not applicable to the application. And those are state standards 1, 3, 7, 10, 11, 15, 16, and 20. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion about these standards which would not apply? Seeing none, all in favor?
All in favor.
Aye. Thank you. Second, factors subject to both state standard review, statutory review standards, and local standards. I got to move here. I move that the planning board finds that the following state and local standards are met since the application involves the amendment of lot lines of 2 existing lots in a previously approved subdivision, and therefore these standards are not applicable to the application. Those would be State Standard 2, Local Standard 9.6.2, State Standard 4, Local Standard 9.7, State Standard 5, Local Standard 9.15, State Standard 6, Local Standard 9.6.3, State Standard 8, Local Standard 9.14, State Standard 12, Local Standard 9.11, State Standard 13, Local Standard 9.99, State Standard 14, and Local Standard 9.10, State Standard 17, Local Standard 9.12, State Standard 18, Local Standard 9.19, and State Standard 21, and Local Standard 9.20. Is there a second to that motion?
Howard's got his hand up.
Okay. Any discussion on these standards? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, we're now to the ones that are relevant to Narrows Landing. They deal with the conformity with local ordinances and plans, subdivision ordinance standards under Section 9, and required improvements under Section 9.6.1 concerning lot markers. I'm opening it up now for discussion to members of the planning board, if you have any questions, based on the recommended findings from the planner.
Did you skip over a bunch of stuff?
I don't think so.
Top of page 4, the local standards not applicable.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did we talk about state standard 9 conformity, local standard 9.1? I was looking, you said something about .6 or something, and then I couldn't find that,
Okay.
but I don't think it was,
Starts conformity, okay.
right.
Yeah, Howard is correct. In talking about what is applicable, I missed local standards not applicable to the application. So let's take care of that, and then we can just discuss those things that are applicable. I move that the planning board finds that the following standards of Section 9 of the town subdivision ordinance are not applicable to Narrows Landing application. 9.4.3, 9.18, 9.2, 9.3, 9.4, 9.5, 9.6, particularly 9.6.4, 9.8, 9.13, 9.16, and 9.17. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Howard. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That's approved 5-0. All right. So now we're ready to talk about the standards that are applicable here. There's a state standard concerning conformity with local ordinances and plans. And I think that's what you were mentioning, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was confused. I didn't realize you were skipping ahead and then coming back.
Okay, so we've taken care of everything that is not applicable.
Okay, great,
Okay.
thank you.
So, again, we have proposed findings by the planner on all of these things. Is there any questions or discussion of any of those matters related to this? Since all we're doing is moving a property line, a lot of the things that we have to deal with subdivisions simply don't apply here. Howard, do you have anything?
I have nothing. I think
Yeah,
this is
Lori?
I have
perfect.
nothing.
Okay. Courtney?
Nope.
Okay. Are there any members of the audience who wish to be heard on this application? Yes, sir.
So,
Would you state your name, please?
I will, I'm Ralph Davies, and we own the property next to lot number 1.
Okay.
And I'm confused because we got a letter in the mail yesterday saying there was a meeting tonight, but we have no map or anything, and after listening to Mark, it doesn't even sound like this even pertains to us, that we're talking about the other side. So this doesn't even pertain to our property at this point, is that correct?
Probably since it's on the other side, it doesn't directly impact you, but the requirement of giving notice, we have to give notice to property owners all the way around the property, whether you're abutting it or not.
Got it.
And
Okay.
that's the reason why you've got it.
No, I was surprised on two fronts. One, there was no clarification about what we were talking about because there was no map that came with our letter. And secondly, I was surprised that we got this a day before the meeting, which doesn't give us a whole lot of time to react.
Did you get it in the mail?
Beg your pardon?
Mail?
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't get anything from,
Okay.
This is the mailer.
Margaret will clarify.
hey, I'm not faulting Margaret, forget it. That's not happening.
That's not a fair fight, yeah.
Margaret from the codes office. I do all of the abutter notices, and the post office returned almost all the abutter notices returned to sender. So we got them all, I mailed them back Friday after the deadline like I do every month, and they came all back to us, almost all of them came back to us on Monday, except the little bit that I mailed out of the Oars Island post office. But everything that went to Harpswell came returned to sender. And so we got it back to Harpswell Monday morning, got them back on the truck, so that's why you didn't get
Okay,
them.
so for the record, this is moot because it has nothing to do with tonight. And I just want to make sure that's clear. This woman is awesome, so
Yeah, she,
don't get the wrong idea here, gang.
Yeah.
But I will, at some point, I'm assuming, once we know who the person is that's actually purchased the property next to us, and since that's closed, I hope we'll know that relatively soon, because they're already doing things next to us that I would have thought they would have spoken to us about, or at least made themselves known to us, and they haven't done that. So we're kind of living in la-la land right now, and there are some things that I'd like to talk to them about, and to you eventually, from the standpoint of just exactly what the ramifications are for what they're doing next to us, and how that's going to play out as far as your board is concerned, so.
yeah, generally, we receive information after it's gone through a lot of other internal processes. The fact that you know who Margaret is, that's your best point of contact. She will know the most accurate and current information for you.
Okay,
From a standpoint of codes, what kind of permits are issued or will be issued on that?
but as far as what their plan is from the standpoint of construction or anything like that, we wouldn't know that, or we
No,
would?
she would know,
Are they under, is
when
it
they
under
file for a building
construction?
permit.
Okay. Because when we were here last time, there was a commitment that the road access to Dowdy Point was going to be on the other side of the lot from us and not next to us.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that that was happening.
If you see something that's making you uncomfortable, right away,
Mark.
come to codes, check it out, and see what
Okay.
the applications and permits are, and make sure that it's being done the way it's
Okay.
supposed to be done.
So just for the record, we want to have nice neighbors, and we want to be nice neighbors. So we'd like to have that party
Your wife's giving.
knock on the door one night and make themselves known to us so we can talk to them. Because there are some things, there are some issues with a couple of sheds on our property and who owns what, et cetera. And I'd like to have a conversation with them about that. Okay? But it's all amicable. This is not.
Yeah, well, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Everybody wants to be good neighbors in Harpswell, and that's why we kind of go through this process, so people get as much public notice as possible. I'm sorry that you didn't get,
No, it's
Yeah.
Like I said, it's
Yeah.
tonight, so.
but the other thing is that everything that we do at the planning board is always noticed on the website. You know, that, unless you have an idea that it's gonna be next to you, you might not find out about it. But when you find out an application has been filed, we are not looking at anything different tonight than what is already posted under the planning board section of the town of Harpswell.
Okay.
So that's always a good place to look in case you have any questions about what may be coming up before us as well.
Well, Margaret's been great, so I'll stay in touch with Margaret.
Yeah, please do.
Idea.
Anyway, sorry to hold this.
That's fine.
No.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the audience? If not, any other from the board? If not, then I move that the planning board that finds that the following standards, okay, we're going to find out. There are a couple of standard, okay. I move that there are two standard motions I'm going to make, and then I'll get to the conclusions. I move that the planning board find that state standard 9 and local standard 9.1 are met based on the following finding, that the lots meet the dimensional standards for a lot in a subdivision. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Lori. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, 5-0. Other one is the factor related to only local standards. I move that the planning board find that the standard 9.6.1 of section 9 of the town subdivision ordinance is met since the application proposes updating the required improvements. Is there a second?
Second.
Courtney, any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Based on that, and in light of these facts, with consideration given to the supporting documentation in the record, including the town planner's recommended findings, the planning board reaches the following conclusions. The planning board finds that the applicants Mark Henry, the Malcolm C. Henry Family Trust, and Constance F. Henry have met the standards of the town of Harpswell subdivision ordinance. The planning board approves the application to amend the previously approved subdivision plan for Narrows Landing subdivision to adjust the shared property boundary for lots A, B, and C as described, subject to the following conditions of approval. 1, the approval is not final until such time as the final plan has been signed by the planning board. 2, this approval is based on the revised plan of lots 1 and 2, the third amendment to the Narrows Landing subdivision, prepared by Owen Haskell, Inc., dated August 27, 2024, and on all submissions and information provided by the applicant at final approval, whether referenced in any findings or conditions of approval. 3, this approval is dependent upon and limited to the proposal and plan contained in the application and supporting documents submitted and affirmed to by the applicant. Any variation from the plan, proposals, and supporting documents except de minimis changes as determined by the town planner that do not affect approval standards is subject to the review and approval of the planning board prior to implementation. 4, monumentation must be placed at all corners and angle points of the proposed subdivision as amended. Are you seconding it before the discussion?
No, I need to make a change.
Okay.
In paragraph 2 of the approval conditions,
Okay.
what we're approving is, I don't want them to have to come back again. What we're approving is the 4th amendment
Yes.
to the subdivision,
Not the third, right?
not the 3rd. And the 4th amendment by Owen Haskell is dated October 14th, 2024. I think that came from the last
Yes. Yeah.
approval, so,
Okay, so let me reread paragraph 2 to make sure that it's correct. The approval is based on the revised plan of lots 1 and 2, the 4th amendment to the Narrows Landing subdivision prepared by Owen Haskell, Inc., dated October 14, 2024, and on all submissions and informations provided by the applicant at final approval, whether referenced in any findings or conditions of approval. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. As updated, does this motion have a second?
I will second.
Harold will second it. Any discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously.
I would love to know what monumentation is,
Pins.
Mr. Planner.
Pins or,
Okay.
in some cases, granite blocks or whatever is decided, a marvelous statue.
That was a new word for me. I figured it was some sort of a monument. First, I thought it was supposed to be documentation and
No,
you type
no.
monumentation, but thank you.
Okay, it is approved. What we will do is once the plan is ready for signature, members of the planning board will sign it and you'll be ready to go.
Sorry to take up your time.
No, that's,
No, it's fine.
we're happy to do it.
I have it right here.
Oh, for us to sign?
Efficient.
Okay, well,
You have the right pen?
okay, well, we'll sign it when we're done. Okay?
Do you guys, maybe we could take an intermission really fast to sign it?
Well, I would like to get people,
Okay.
because are they gonna have to take it, they're not gonna take it with them, correct?
They were hoping to.
Because it's an hour ride back to pick it up.
Well, then let's do
Do
it.
that.
Let's take a,
Then let's do
take a
it.
2-minute.
All right, well, then we'll take 2 minutes and do it.
I
Okay.
can appreciate the driving aspect.
If you just move your computer, I'll give it to you. Sorry. Done. 3 pages. Thanks, guys.
A lefty, look at that.
They're good, there's got 3 copies, right?
3.
Do you have to date it too?
No. The plan is dated.
Ah, good.
None of those 3 signatures were the same. I have no idea why.
Thank you. Gracias. So we get a reverse order.
Yeah. You were at the same one?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that you were gonna have to make.
So prepared, Margaret.
Oh, glad you spoke up.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. And that saved us all a special trip into the town hall to sign that.
That's true too.
All right, number 2 on the, under old business is item 24-10-01. Lynette Shepherd, Mike Moore / Archipelago representative. This is the consideration of an application to construct a commercial wharf with bait cooler at 225 Ash Point Road. Matt?
Yes, so again, this, this application came before us last month. And unfortunately, we had to table it, so it is back here again. The applicant is looking to put in a replacement wharf and bait cooler, as well as add a, or I should say, remove and relocate a workshop further inland. And The curious thing about this application, and I'm sorry for the confusing formatting of this, is that one document from last month contains the shoreland and floodplain standards, and the new document that was provided for this month contains the site plan review standards, and that's really just relating to the workshop that's gone inland. So part of tabling this application was receiving more information about that workshop, so that we could complete that section of the approval. So it is on two different documents, and that might make it a tiny bit longer, but not too much, because we'd have to do it all anyway. So I don't know if there's anything that the applicants would like to add, and yeah, you can go up to the.
Okay, well, before we hear from you, the first thing we have to do is answer the question whether all of the submission requirements have been met.
You'd like me to answer that?
Well, let's hope your answer and ours is the same. I would move that the planning board finds that the application of Mike Morris and Lynette Shepherd meets the submission requirements and is in order for consideration by the board. Is there support? Yeah. That was your that was your finding, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt, was this revised from when we first got it, dated the 15th?
The first one, the 15th.
Guess I didn't
The one
get-
from last month, you mean, or?
No, I had one stated November 15th.
There's a November 15th and an October 16th.
Oh, okay. I had the old one too, I'm sure.
I believe Margaret might have printed out both.
I think
Yeah.
there's another one up there.
Is there another one?
Something different than,
They were both in your packets,
oh,
the draft motion.
really?
Okay, well,
I think so.
the first thing is,
And there's copies of both over there.
okay, so the first question is, are the submission requirements complete? And I've moved it, is there a second? I believe Matt seconded. Any discussion on that before we move to the application? Any dis-
October one, we don't really need the October one, do we? Do we need?
Yes, we need both, because it wasn't reviewed at the last meeting.
So the only point that I would like to make is that the one on the dated the 15th has several references to Mitchell Field.
Yes,
in it.
those will need to be removed. That was copy and pasted erroneously, so
I noticed that.
that will be changed for the final version.
Yeah, I just think we ought to
I had it on here.
Because they're not even close to being.
just,
But that has nothing to do with what the applicant provided.
absolutely.
Okay, so there, okay, so all in favor of finding that the application meets the submission requirements? Say aye.
Oh,
Aye.
Aye.
Howard?
I'm sorry?
We're voting on whether it meets the submission requirements. Okay, five.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Am I the
now
only
we can- Okay, now we can move on to conformance with applicable standards. Okay, first of all, before we get into those standards, I don't think that we've really had any kind of a discussion about what is proposed here.
No, I gave a brief introduction a minute ago, but
Yeah,
the applicant has a commercial wharf that was damaged in the storm, in a series of storms, I believe. And they're looking to, replace that wharf, but to remove one of the structures on it and move it further inland, which is the site plan review section of this application.
so are you saying that the fish house was originally on the wharf and now it's being moved off?
Right, there's a workshop and a bait shed, and the workshop will be relocated.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to
Sure.
talk about?
Yes, please.
Yes, good evening. I'm sorry if I'm yelling here on the microphone. Good evening, my name's Mike Morse from Archipelago in Portland. I'm here on behalf of Lynette Shepard, the owner of 225 Ash Point Road here in Harpswell. And we are here representing both sets of applications. I guess there are actually 4 applications before you tonight for the planning board's consideration, and I'll walk you through that in a minute. I've just got a few notes that I'd like to just walk through very quickly. I should wrap this up in no more than like 90 minutes or so. So, get comfortable. No, I'm kidding with you. So just to reiterate, Lynette Shepard, the applicant, owns this property at 225 Ash Point Road. It's just a little more than an acre. It's 45,000 square feet and change. It has approximately 110 feet of shore frontage. The lot was created as part of an inheritance when her father passed away several years ago. The lot is located in both the commercial, partially within the Commercial Fisheries 1 district and also the Commercial Fisheries 2 district. And the lot is currently developed to support and is utilized for commercial fishing operation. For those of you on the planning board that attended the site walk, you probably observed that is the only use that is there. The commercial fishing is the only use that is proposed on the property. And both Lynette and her son both fish out of, off of this property. Historically, back sometime in the 1970s, Lynette's father had constructed this bulkhead, the fish house, the cooler, and the wharf and float, ramp and float that had originally been there. Just to clarify the record here, the wharf itself had sustained some damage many years ago. I'm going to just speculate it was somewhere around 10 or 12 or maybe 15 years ago, and slowly started to degrade after that, and had fully washed away prior to the storms in January. We talk about all the damage done in January. The wharf itself had actually disappeared before January. It might have been that December 2022 storm that I think had taken that out finally. But on the other hand, the bulkhead is still there. That sustained a fair amount of damage in January with the 2 storms. The fish house building also is present. It was starting to look its age, if you will, but that also sustained a fair amount of, or significant amount of damage during the January storms. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that record. The only remains of the original wharf out into this intertidal zone are 3 remaining portions of the original stone and timber cribs that had been present. Those are proposed to be removed. Some of the stone will be reused as part of this project, but there will actually be a net decrease in the coastal wetland impact for this project. That's DEP and Army Corps' jurisdiction more than it is probably the town's, but I wanted to just make note of that. So as Matthew had indicated, the applicant's proposing to reconstruct the bulkhead, and the concrete pad that was on the bulkhead is still partially located on the bulkhead that supports the commercial fishing activity up on the landward side, and they're proposing to reconstruct the wharf, a 16 by 80 wharf, along with a 4-foot by 40-foot aluminum ramp leading down to a 12 by 36-foot float. The bulkhead, by the way, is approximately 32 feet square, 32 feet by 32 feet, with this poured concrete surface on top. We're also proposing, and this is more based on the shoreland zoning ordinance, I think it's more of a CEO level review rather than the planning board, but since it's part of the overall project, we wanted to make sure that it's before the planning board as well, so that you can get your eyes on it. And in case I missed something in the ordinance that does give the planning board the authority to review it, I wanted to bring this up as well. So what's also included is this shoreline stabilization piece. We talked about the January storms and the December 2022 storms, and I think it was the December 2022 storm that had done a fair amount of damage to the shoreline, and then that was just exacerbated with the January storms. So we're proposing to rip-wrap the shoreline. It's going to be fairly minimal. It's not a high bank. It's a several-foot tall bank, 4 foot, 3.5, 4 foot, maybe 4.5 foot tall bank. And all the shoreline stabilization work, the riprap, will be located outside of the coastal wetland. This is still above the highest annual tide line, so it's really to protect the shoreline from wave run-up during these large coastal ocean storms. There will be about 74 feet, roughly 75 feet of riprap on the shoreline for the shoreline stabilization piece. It'll be broken into two parts. You have the about 18 feet on the southerly side over to the property line to the south, and then to the north of the bulkhead, you have the remainder. There will be a bait cooler. The bait cooler will be reconstructed on the wharf and bulkhead, as was original in the original location for the fish house. And that bait cooler will be 10 feet by 20 feet, so it meets the 200 square foot limitation under the floodplain standards, which I'll get into in just a minute. And then finally, the workshop building is what pushed us into the site plan review, and that's going to be a 16 by 24 foot, 2-story building. The upper story will be used for storage and that sort of thing for items that will not be needed, perhaps in the off-season or that sort of thing. There will be no septic. There will be no need for a septic. There will be no pressurized water. There is electricity to the property as it is today, and that will remain. In the proposed workshop location, instead of rebuilding that in the same original footprint where it had been severely damaged by the bigger storms in January, it was going to be difficult to protect that building in that location. It was going to be difficult to, frankly, meet the floodplain standard for elevating at that location. So the decision was, it's really the smartest decision to just move it further back. So it'll be located approximately 135 feet back from the shoreline. It's still a functionally water-dependent structure, but it's well more than the ordinary shoreline setback requirement. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the application, the packet of applications before you consists of 4 different applications, and I just walk through that very quickly. You have the basic land use ordinance, so the general planning board approval, planning board application. This was submitted as part of what would have been the October review. And by the way, I do apologize for the confusion associated with that. Had we foreseen a site plan review application, we would have included that in the original packet. So I apologize for that. So the basic land use ordinance, general planning board application, that was this is the October 16th notes from Matthew that you have before you. That was for the wharf ramp and float, the shoreline stabilization, and the bulkhead reconstruction. The site plan review only pertains to that was submitted later and is the later November 15th memo that you have in front of you. It only pertains to the workshop building or the fish house that'll be located further back. And that is because we don't have an established residential use on the property. So it's not an accessory to a residential use. It's no house, it's not an overall accessory use on the property. So just as a technicality, it triggered the site plan review. So we have, as I mentioned, the general planning board application. Second, we have this floodplain conditional use application. This was also part of that October 16th packet that you have before you. The only purpose for that, or the primary driver for that, was this 10 by 20 or 200 square foot bait cooler that's located within the floodplain. There's a provision in the town ordinance that allows for these sorts of bait coolers to be constructed within the floodplain with a conditional use permit from the planning board, provided it meets certain standards. And hopefully you find that you agree that we meet those standards tonight. The third application is just the general shoreline zoning application related to piers, docks, wharves, and other structures extending below the shore, the normal high water line or the upland edge of the coastal wetland. And so that's part of that application that was submitted that relates to the October 16th minutes or notes that you have before you. And then, again, the fourth application, as I mentioned already, is the site plan review application that was submitted a little later. It's the November 15th memo that you have in front of you, and it relates to the workshop building because it's a commercial, technically it's a commercial structure on a non-residential lot. And then quickly to close, Norman Wallace at Redfish had prepared a number of the plans, and then the engineer, all the plans were reviewed and stamped and signed by a professional licensed engineer with Criterium Engineers in Freeport. The DEP has already approved the project. They approved it, I'm going to say, a month or two ago, and it may have been 4 months ago, the way my memory is these days. But the DEP has already approved the project with the coastal wetland impacts and all the rest. We are expecting, frankly, we expected the Army Corps of Engineers at the federal level to have issued this months ago as well. And they've indicated that they are just waiting for one last piece of information, which is from one of their federal agencies. And they anticipated no problems, but they need to check a box. And so we expect that approval anytime as well. So the other permits are either issued or will be, fairly quickly. The last comment that I have is related to the memo, November 15th memo on site plan, for the site plan application on page 2, and I think Matthew already alluded to this, and some of the others, where there's discussion about Mitchell Field and a boat launch ramp and trailer parking. If this is a means so that Lynette could somehow gain some ownership of Mitchell Field, we're willing to talk about that. But
There's a line for that.
so I imagine you've already proposed some language, but I drafted up a provision to replace that, and I'm glad to hand that on. And it says, I move that the planning board finds that the application of Lynette Shepherd for the reconstruction of a commercial wharf, bulkhead, bait cooler, and workshop building and the construction of riprap along the riprap shoreline stabilization meets the requirement of section 15 based on the following findings of fact that are incorporated in this motion by reference. Note 15.22 is not applicable. 15.22 is the Mitchell Field standard. I'd love to hand it to you.
We'll take it.
Okay.
I think our findings are broader than that, and our conclusions of law in the October memo dealing with the shoreline zone, all I think we need to do is, by motion from the findings, remove any references to the town of Harpswell or Mitchell Field property.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have to look at other people's drafts of,
Keep it simple.
yeah,
But thank you.
but thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was
You're
just
very welcome.
something that happened.
Plus, we don't get involved with riprap,
No, all we're
so
dealing
we
with
can't
is,
approve the riprap
Okay.
anyway.
no, all we're talking about really is the reconstruction of a wharf and construction of a new workshop.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a
Which was
question.
in
though.
my change.
And the replacement of the bulkhead, which does partially extend below the upland edge of the coastal wetland.
I think that's
It's a
DEP that
structure.
does that.
Yeah, but that's also,
It's part of the shoreland
that's
review.
that's part of meeting the findings rather than what you're actually doing.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer questions or, oh, sure.
Yeah, I have a question before you sit down and I make you get up.
That's fine.
But There is it's noted that the bait cooler will be anchored, and I was just wondering how that was going to be done.
That's a-
Obviously, it's a rough spot there,
Right.
as I know Ms. Shepherd has seen with the storms. I was just wondering about that.
Sure. So this is all resting on a concrete pad that'll be, so thick. And I haven't spoken with a contractor to find out that exact detail, but what's customary is they would place some anchors, some type of steel anchor or galvanized steel anchor, or stainless even, down into the concrete while it's being poured, and then fasten the building down with some type of bracket mounted to the framing.
So it's
is
literally
pretty-
anchors,
It absolutely is
Okay.
anchored.
right?
They may have other methods, and I apologize if it's not exactly that way, but that's a typical method.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other discussion by members of the, Matt? go
Yes,
ahead.
so just to clarify, I will 100% at a minimum be editing the second paragraph of the background on the November 15th motions, as well as the submission requirements section and the conformance with the approval standards section, so that all of this is squared up. As I've said at previous meetings, still really need to make some blank versions of these, because copy and pasting everything is a pain, so.
There's
hopefully
also,
we'll get
Matt,
sorted
a
out.
reference to a boat launch
Yeah,
Right,
on
yeah, he
page
knows that.
4 that needs to
Yeah.
come out.
Yeah.
And let me just,
yeah,
Yeah, we'll get rid of
I
all
had,
that.
I had a bunch of spots noted, so.
yeah, any of those that you've sent me or will, those will get edited for the final version, so.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion of the application? Questions, comments from the board?
Until we get to the finding, to the voting part. Conclusions of
Yeah,
law.
the conclusions of law? Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's do the findings, and then we'll get to the conclusions. Okay,
Which one are you doing now, the October 16th or the November 15th?
November
Christine,
15, that's
you
the most
need the
recent one,
October
right?
16th.
No, you have to do both.
Extra.
There are two,
Oh, okay, so
okay.
that'd be nice.
I don't have an October.
I had another one.
I'll get you one.
Okay,
Oh.
This one deals with the wharf itself, the dock.
okay. All right, well, then we'll do two sets of motions, one of which has to do with the wharf
There it is.
under a draft motion dated October 16. And then the second one will be on the draft motion of November 15.
Okay,
Okay, so I'm looking at the construction of a commercial wharf on the findings of the planner dated October 16.
okay.
Okay, let's see. I move that the planning board finds that the application of Lynette Shepherd for the construction of a commercial wharf meets the requirements of section 15.3 that are applicable to the application based on the following findings that are incorporated by reference. And those are 15.3.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.8, 0.9, 0.10, 0.11.
And there's a note in here that 15.3.7 is not applicable.
Is not applicable. Should we better do that one first? Okay, let's start off by doing the one that's not applicable, and then we'll do the ones that are. I move that the planning board finds that the application of Lynette Shepherd for the construction of a commercial wharf that meets I missed it again, didn't I? Oh, no, okay. The one meets the requirements of section 15.3 that are applicable to the application based on the findings that are incorporated by reference into this motion, noting that section 15.3.7 is not applicable.
Perfect.
Is there a second?
I second.
Howard? Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. So we'll do the conclusions of law on that one, which is, in light of the findings of fact, with consideration given to the supporting documentation in the record, I move that the planning board reaches the following conclusions. The planning board finds that the applicant, Lynette Shepherd, has met the standards of the town of Harpswell shoreline zoning ordinance, flood hazard development ordinance, and basic land use ordinance for the construction of a commercial wharf on lot 151 in tax map 17. The planning board approves the application and site plan with the following standard conditions of approval. 1, the applicant must obtain site plan review approval prior to commencing construction activity. 2, the approval is not final until such final plan showing all conditions of approval and any waivers granted have been signed by the chair of the planning board. 3, this approval is based on the approved plans and on all submissions and information provided by the applicant at final approval, whether referenced in any findings or conditions of approval. This approval is dependent upon and limited to the proposal and plans contained in the application and supporting documents submitted and affirmed to by the applicant. Any variation from the plan proposals and supporting documents, except de minimis changes as determined by the town planner that do not affect approval standards, is subject to the review and approval of the planning board prior to implementation. 5, the applicant shall obtain all necessary state and federal approvals before applicant commences any land use activity pursuant to this site plan approval and shall comply with the requirements of those permits and approvals. And 6, all work shall be completed in accordance with best management practices for soil erosion and sedimentation control. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Courtney seconds. Any discussion?
So
All in
I
favor?
just have a question. So it's just.
It's approved 5-0.
Yeah, for 5, I mean, it's just the DEP that's not, it says state and federal, which, it's the Army Corps of Engineers, that's the one that's missing, okay. Thank you.
I just have a question from that. We, in the past, have not, when we're doing either a site plan review or a shoreline, particularly under the shoreline zoning ordinance, we've never done anything, made any findings under the basic land use ordinance. Can you discuss that with us? Because this is a new section in this application.
Yeah, so this section of the basic land use ordinance, 13.4.7, is related to commercial wharves in the shoreland zone. So it's an extra set of standards that commercial wharves appear to need to meet.
Okay, I see it.
Are you, did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay, you ready
It
to
did.
move
It's
on?
just something, a new set of approvals that we
No, we needed more.
needed.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, now we'll go to the second, which is the draft motions which were prepared by the town planner November 15 of 2024. I move that the planning board finds that the application of Mike Morris and Lynette Shepherd, and we're going to have time for discussion after we move this in second. I move that the planning board finds that the application of Mike Morris and Lynette Shepherd to reconstruct a wharf and construct a new workshop meets the requirements of section 15 based on the findings of fact that are incorporated into this motion by reference, noting that section 15.22 is not applicable, and also noting that any reference to Mitchell Field that were in the proposed findings will be removed from this. Is there a second before the discussion? Seconded by Matt. All right, any discussion?
Yep.
Seeing none, all in favor? 5-0. Okay. Conclusions of law. And again, after the second, you can ask your question, okay?
I already asked it.
You what?
Good.
You're,
Good. Yep.
you're done? Wow. Okay. In
Surprise.
light of these findings of fact with consideration given to the supporting documentation in the record, I move that the planning board reaches the following conclusions. The planning board finds that the applicant Lynette Shepherd has met the standards of the Town of Harpswell Site Plan Review Ordinance for the construction of a commercial wharf and workshop on Lot 151 on Tax Map 17. The planning board approves the application and site plan with the following standard conditions of approval. 1, the approval is not final until such time as final plans showing all conditions of approval and any waivers granted have been signed by the chair of the planning board. 2, this approval is based on the approved plans and on all submissions and information provided by the applicant at final approval, whether referenced in any findings or conditions of approval. 3, this approval is dependent upon and limited to the proposal and plans contained in the application and the supporting documents submitted and affirmed to by the applicant. Any variation from the plan, proposals, and supporting documents except de minimis changes as determined by the town planner that do not affect approval standards is subject to the review and approval of the planning board prior to implementation. 4, the applicant shall obtain all necessary state and federal approvals before the applicant commences any land use activity pursuant to this site plan approval and shall comply with the requirements of those permits and approvals. 5, all work shall be completed in accordance with best management practices for soil erosion and sedimentation control. I believe that's it. Yeah. Is there support for that motion?
He's got his hand up.
Is somebody going to second that?
I did.
Yeah,
Oh,
Howard, he
okay.
put his hand
Thank you,
up.
Barbara. Any discussion on the conclusions of law?
No, I
Seeing
already
none,
asked.
all in favor? 5-0. Motion is passed. Thank you. Thank you, too, for your,
Yeah, go forth and fish.
thank you for your nice detailed description.
Yeah.
And you did keep it under 90 minutes, and we do appreciate
I'd like to know how you've been doing the fishing. How have you guys been managing?
Well, we do our plan for, the link art, and then go over to the next door, and use their wharf temporarily. So it's kind of difficult, but.
I would say. Okay, I was thinking about that.
They've taken us on,
Good.
That's nice.
Neighborly.
yes.
Their turn may come, unfortunately.
We all need to work together.
Good luck.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
third item of old business is item 24-10-02, Robert Gerke, owner, and Diane Plord, applicant. Consideration of application to build a new residential wharf in the Resource Protection District. Yeah,
So this is a residential wharf, and the location is, I spent some time discussing this with the harbor master, because I really didn't know what to put on here, but it seems like it's some areas are called Lish's Cove, and some are Cromwell's Cove, where this dock will be entering into. He wasn't entirely sure, so I just put both of them. But they're looking to put a 6x40 dock and ramp with a 3x40 ramp and a 10x20 seasonal float. We have done a sidewalk, and again, they had previously come at the October meeting, but we ended up tabling it. I don't know if the applicant is here or if they would like to say anything, but you can feel free to now.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Diane Ford, the applicant for Mr. Gerkink. I did not go to the site visit, unfortunately, but he is planning to rebuild what was taken out by the same storms. And they're proposing to build the 6-foot by 40 long, and that's a little bit short, that's shorter than the previous dock that was out there. I think it was like 60 feet, right, Paul? It was
It's gonna go the same.
Oh, it's the same distance, so it's not gonna go any farther out into the water than it was before. And they're going to keep it the same length, but a little bit wider than before. Because it can go to 6 feet instead of 4. It'll connect to the 3-foot by 40-foot long seasonal ramp and a 10-foot by 20-foot seasonal float. So it's technically the same, only the width is changing. And like Matthew said, it is in 2 codes, so it is confusing, yes. It's hard to explain that to some people.
What is that?
The DEP has approved it. I have the form here. They approved it, and like Mike Morris was saying, we're waiting for the Army Corps. They are far behind. I've gotten many emails saying that they're like a month, at least, maybe 6 weeks behind, because they're so short-staffed. So, and they've changed their format on how they approve.
So weird.
So they don't give us letters anymore, they give us just a number and a form. So it's rather confusing, and Margaret and I have gone through, I think Margaret sent more emails to the Army Corps than I have. So we're waiting on that, but the DEP has approved it for that use.
So the Army Corps of Engineers, now the applicant self-verifies it.
Yes, it's called the self-verification form, and they do give a
Interesting.
permit number,
Okay.
but I have to fill in the self-verification form with whatever information they require, name, whatever, send it back in, and I never hear back from them on that.
But they
So-
trust you as to whatever you say,
Because
apparently.
they've given me the permit number to put on that form. So when I return an email, it's done. So, but it's just very confusing, because I've never done that. I mean, I've worked in the code office for 9.5 years, I never had that before. So it's kind of odd.
Federal government, it's also subject to pains and penalties of perjury. And you go to the Lewisburg jail for lying on a federal application.
you can, yeah.
So,
Well, I'm not doing that.
No, I just
Well,
seemed
I know.
I
interesting.
don't want to visit you, I don't want
Yeah.
you to visit me in the, no, thank
Just
you.
an
I don't
odd,
wanna
I
be
thought it was an
visited
odd
there
thing. you
It
know.
is very odd, yeah, we're very confused on why they changed it. The DEP still sends 7 to 9 pages of permit. The Army Corps, I guess, wanted less paper trail, I don't know. So, we're doing it that way. But, otherwise, it's clear cut, it's been approved, and we just need to have the planning board approved.
Is this a new construction
It's
or
it was com-
rebuild?
It's a rebuild of what was there before, but there's nothing left.
Well, when was it there before? When was it last there?
When was it, Paul? When Paul built it?
It was before the storm.
The
When
storm took it out.
So
when
it
we
was there
did the
pre-January
sidewalk, the
storm?
ramp was there.
Yeah,
A couple years ago, I think they said.
yeah.
So not everything
know.
was gone.
We went back with I went back with the harbor master looking at satellite photos back to 2014, and we just couldn't, all we could see was the concrete slab. We couldn't find where there was an existing wharf ever out there.
Did you see the pins out there where it was before?
I did, we were there at high tide,
Oh, yeah, no.
so I couldn't see the pins. We did, all I saw was the concrete slab and there was a ramp there too. Was that the ramp that was used or was that is that the new
It's gonna
ramp?
be the new ramp.
I guess that's where my confusion lies
It
is.
didn't look like a new ramp.
No, it did not.
No, I didn't think so either.
Yeah, here it is, eh?
Right. Is there any photos of it before?
No, I don't have them. They might have them.
Because I just don't, I mean, they may have had something there, but I don't ever remember it ever being used, you know what I mean? Like, I fished right there, and there was never a float and ramp that was out there.
Oh, yeah, Paul built it.
No, I didn't.
Oh, that's right, Redfish did.
I'm not sure who built it, honestly.
I believe it was Redfish.
Yeah, I mean, the slab was there, but they never had a ramp and float.
I never got
Out there.
photos of it previously from them.
And we couldn't find them, me and the harbor master, he has the ability to go back like year by year, and we went back to
Well, yeah, anybody can.
2014.
Anybody can on Google Earth.
No, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
But we couldn't find an existing wharf there, and I guess the reason I bring that concern is, when we get to, where is it, 15.3.4, there's gear there, where they wanna put the float, and there's been gear there for 15 years, I mean, I know two guys that fish traps right there, it's a sand spot where it drops down off that ledge. I mean, you got 2 fathom of water there at high tide. So, I mean, it is going to affect the fisheries.
It's not commercial fisheries.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. It's not going out any farther than it was before.
But that's what I'm saying, it wasn't
We don't
there
know.
before.
When it went
It
on.
had to have been there.
It was there.
because
The pins are all up there.
When I got there, the ramp was there, the float was there, and we took the old stuff away. There's a brand new ramp there now.
I don't ever remember seeing a ramp and float there, and we don't have any, and I guess that's where the confusion is it says construct new, not reconstruct or rebuild, so.
Well, most of what rebuild means is if it's still on site, you can rebuild it. You rebuild what's on site. There's nothing on site anymore because it was washed away. So it's a new build.
I agree. I agree that it's a new build, and I think it's going to have an adverse effect on the fisheries because there hasn't been a ramp and float there for years.
Well, it's, all right, so how far out does 40 feet go into the waterway that will affect commercial fishermen? I mean,
What zone is that over there?
Resource protected shoreline residential.
Okay.
I mean, do you have, because what if I could see where it was going, it would help, because
If you
when.
went there at low tide, you'd see it, because you'd see the pins, and then there's a crop of ledge.
Yeah, I know the ledge, I'm familiar with it, then it drops down, and it's gonna go right against the ledge right there, basically, at low tide? The float will be?
The float will be out just beyond that, because the old pier went out through that crop of ledge.
Right.
If you was there at low tide, you could see the pins that was there.
Yeah. And I believe that I'm not disagreeing that the pins were there, what I'm saying is there was never a ramp and float that came off of said pier that was there. And that's where the effect to the
I
fisheries.
think we can prove that it was, because
That's all I'm asking for, is to see that there was, because nobody that I've talked to that fishes there remembers there ever being one.
we took the ramp and float out that was from there. You know, they were older, but that's the reason why we replaced them.
There should be a permit, right? There
Yeah.
should be evidence in the office, I'm thinking in the
no, it's
codes
that
office.
old, it's that old.
The
He didn't,
cement
Yeah.
abutment is clear, it's clearly there. It's,
We couldn't find anything.
that cement
Well-
part of it is
That's what bothered
5
it,
feet
because those
wide,
records are with Paul.
20 feet.
Right.
something like that.
So when was it destroyed?
I don't know exactly. They said it was during,
So-
said the last of it went out,
In
so,
January.
yeah, I think they said
Was
that's
there a
when the last.
I think the
There are
last,
other little
Good.
dots
I
on
don't know,
it.
how come we couldn't
It was-
find one?
That's what I'm
They
asking.
have two properties right there,
yeah,
and, they own both properties, and they had a long here that all of that went out.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, that, all of that went out during that storm, and there was a,
They had like, there was a little wooden pier that stuck out there that was destroyed there, but there was, I mean, and I think it's because, like you said, they were older folks. I think they hadn't had a ramp and float there in 15 years, almost 20 years. And we couldn't go
That's
back
why
and
there's
find a
no
permit where they'd ever
that's,
constructed a,
that's why there's no permit.
they probably did it without.
Very rare do you have a permit that old.
So if it's been gone for 15 years, do we have to treat this as new construction then, rather than rebuilding an existing?
that's what I'm asking.
No, Paul took down something and he's rebuilding it. He's doing that whole new,
Well, what did he take down versus what was there?
There
And-
wasn't anything in the water when we got there.
no, that was all destroyed, that was all washed out to shore, to sea, I mean.
Yeah, there's also something in that finding that talks about the length of the proposed facility is similar to other existing docks on neighboring lots. From your observation of that, is that correct? Are there other,
Yeah, there are other, I mean, it's the way, there's a deep hole right there where they want the float to sit. Like there's a deep sand spot right there that's been fished for years. Guys start fishing there in the spring.
Are you saying that the float will interfere with the fishing?
Right.
Well, then the harbor master needs to weigh in
Oh, they
on what
do.
would be going there and the shading that is what's 500.
He was waiting to see what we were gonna do.
Well, he has to
Because I sit
weigh,
on that board too.
he has to
Really?
weigh in anyway.
Yeah, because we
The
didn't.
harbor master's waiting for you to make a decision?
Yeah,
I think he should have been here then.
no, he's never here. He makes a finding for the selectmen,
For the fisheries.
the fisheries committee, and then they go to the selectmen,
Market's coming up.
and he advises the selectmen what he thinks as to whether or not it's gonna affect the fisheries.
And we have addressed that in the Harbor and Waterfront, and that was a concern of the Harbor and Waterfront Committee, but we were trying to, the question arose again of, when was this last in use, as an existing ramp and float, and nobody's been able to find any permitting, any photos, or
They didn't do it.
anybody
back
that
then.
can remember if there being a ramp and float there.
Well, they didn't do it back then, unfortunately. A lot.
Well, for the permit, I can agree if it's that old, but there would be at least some memory. I mean, I'm boating and I know almost every ramp and stuff that's out there. You just
It should be a
recognize it.
photo, I mean, they've gotta have a
Something.
photo or something.
Or even an aerial from like the Google Maps.
Because I mean,
that
we went through Google Maps, me and Paul, the harbor master, all we could ever find was the wooden pier that stuck out. There was never a ramp and float there.
Okay, so what do you want to do? What's the,
what's
How do we
the,
go
what's
forward
the
here?
pleasure of the board?
I'd like to get a little bit more information on this one. There's a lot of confusion, there's definitely discrepancies. And I can't vote on a discrepancy. I need to have.
so, you want photographs and you want a permit? Which I
Either,
ca- which
either
I
or,
can't, which I can't
either or,
produce.
either or.
I can't produce
You
a
can't
permit.
produce
Well,
a
then,
permit
so
that
let's go with
doesn't
what you
exist.
can
Right.
produce.
What's- I-
Photos would probably be a lot more, you know,
Of what? What do you want
Of
photos?
where the ramp and float's at.
showing it actually
before.
in the water.
Actually in the water.
Okay, and you want, how far back?
Oh, I mean, the most recent one.
I mean, okay, so the most recent one, okay, and you want, you can let me know, or where the commercial fishermen traverse, as close to that, because if there's others that are 40 feet to 60 feet out into the water, obviously this one's not going out 60 feet, but this one's going out 40 feet, and if the others are 40 feet, how can that be in the way? So I just want to know where the commercial fishermen traverse and how close they come to the,
It depends on the shoreline.
well, then you have to let me know.
I mean,
If you're-
it's a
if you-
case-by-case basis. That's why we review these on a case-by-case basis.
Well, 15.3.4 says the facility should be located so as to minimize adverse effects on fishers.
And I think we
It's
can
not
do
our
that.
burden, it's the
Well-
applicant's burden.
I know that, but I want to know what what you want me to continue working on this.
I think we can minimize it if we could keep it in the existing footprint, but we need to know where that existing footprint was, and there's no documentation to show that, and nobody can seem to remember it.
Well, in Harpswell's defense, 99% of the people here aren't from here. So they never grew up here, so they don't see, when you might because you were a kid here, but I'm just saying.
I knew the Schmitz that used to own it.
99%
So-
of, so like I said, you probably were here, but I know, a lot of the planning board people and people who live here were not here 25, 30 years ago.
That's why we're looking
That's why we
for
need to.
Right, that's why I've
I'm
stepped
just
up the.
saying,
Yeah,
Yep.
as you know.
And I'd like to get Paul Plummer involved here too. I mean, the fact
Yeah.
that he's waiting for us and we're waiting for him, we've got to come up with some.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
need
there's
his
gotta be a better
input on
solution.
this.
Press him, yeah.
Yeah, it makes
I do
makes
agree.
no sense for us.
I was
to-
stuck in the middle on it too.
And if he could actually do a couple pictures, because I know he can take pictures of what he's looking at. I
Yeah.
would like to actually see what he's got
Yep.
in that area. That would be very helpful.
Because the last thing I want to do is for us to approve it, and then for Plummer to look at it and say, no, that's not going to
Yeah.
work, and just put you through
Well,
aggravation.
I always thought that Paul Plummer was supposed to supply some kind of his ideas and his opinion for the planning board to put in the packet.
Not since I've been on the planning board.
No, I spoke with Paul today, and he said that that has never been the case
Okay.
since he's been harbor master. It's always been after
The
the
other way
planning
around.
board.
Maybe we need to change that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that doesn't make
whether
any
that makes
sense.
sense or not is another question, but,
Make any sense.
yeah.
Well, it just
Then
saves
how
us
can we
from
make that
tabling
Finding of
again.
15.3.4
Well,
without,
yeah.
without,
Well, we want to get it done right.
I agree.
So-
He just doesn't like having.
All right, so what's
That's
the,
all right, well, let's we get paid for it, Paul.
all right, so what kind of information are we still looking for? Because I'm assuming that what we're going to want to do is table this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
Okay.
but, I mean, the last time we met, there wasn't anybody that could answer our questions. These are the same questions we had the last time.
No, I answered all your questions and I put them in the packet. I gave you all the answers to your questions.
Yes,
Yes, we had that.
yes.
Well, to reiterate, I'd like to see what you guys can find for photos, information showing the float out in the water.
Yeah.
I'd like to see what Paul Plummer has found going back, X number of years, as far back as possible to more current would be helpful. It gives us a nice snapshot of
Paul's
time.
documentation of that as well, it's right next to it. Get that far.
Well, the thing is also is when DEP and Army Corps look at these, they don't need to go back 15 years with Google Earth. They don't need to go back 20 years with Google, wherever you find those, pictures from years ago. Because have you ever been on Google Earth 20 years ago? It's
However,
not good.
their standards and ours are different.
They didn't have it.
I know that for sure, believe me, I know
Didn't have
that.
it 20 years ago.
Yeah, they didn't have good photos, drones or anything.
And Paul uses a certain software, I'm pretty sure that pulls that information. It's just not from Google Maps. That's just a more public reference.
Okay, so how soon can we get that information? Is that something that we would be able
I'm
to?
sure we could talk to Paul the next day or two. And then it's just a matter of how soon we can get any photographic evidence of,
I'll get it to you next week, by next, what's today, Wednesday, by next Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm the one who has to do the work, so I'm not doing it in 2 days.
Yeah,
Especially if you, I can understand.
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay,
So give me a date when you want the information.
what do we need, 10
What's
days
the
before
cutoff
the?
of the, Margaret, what's the cutoff for the meeting in December?
It's usually 2 weeks.
Next Wednesday, I think she said, next Wednesday?
No,
Next
no, oh,
Wednesday.
So it's a week from today, week from today.
That enough time for you?
I'll make it.
Considering, considering this isn't a full application, all we're asking for is a couple of pieces of information. The fact that we give her a couple of extra days doesn't really.
Yeah, we can talk to Paul.
I'll send it to Margaret.
Okay.
Margaret would be
Yeah.
great to send it to.
Yeah.
So
I'm
by next Wednesday is what, the 20, you want it by the
27th.
27th?
Yep, yep.
Okay, so you want photos, and I know we don't have a permit, but maybe
It
there's,
would be nice to have a date, even,
Yeah.
that it existed.
okay, I'll
Okay, well, we're clear,
I'll call Mr. Gerking.
okay, we're clear on what we're asking for.
Yeah, ramp and float when it was last in existence.
Right.
So being, with that understood, I would entertain a motion to table this matter until the December,
18?
I'm sorry, I've just been looking through the main aerial photo repository. Would one of you be able to confirm that I'm looking at the right property on this? Probably Matt.
Not
Probably
me,
Matt.
it was Matt.
Since he's been looking at it with Paul.
Is this that property that we're,
Can you zoom out?
yeah. So that's the island.
Get
That's
that
right here.
application.
It looks like the correct house, and you can see the dock coming off of it. I believe that's that house. And this is the dock.
It's the house, yeah, that's the way the house lies, because remember the sidewalk, the
Yeah,
garage
no,
is there,
it's
and
the
that was
same
the
shape.
dock there. But where's the,
So this right here looks
Well, I
like
have a
that dock and,
This is the.
and that has ending at the ledge.
If you have a
It's on
dock
There's no
that's
ramp
on
and
for a
float
long
there.
time,
Yeah.
and you want
That's what
to-
I know,
do
that
not
was
have
there,
to
so
go
there was
this
never
is-
ramp
where
and
it's
float.
This is all that's there.
Has
Yeah.
adverse effect on
I just wanted to make sure.
I mean, I
before-
think if it's been
No,
gone for
that
like a
was
few
that
months,
wooden
that's one
pier that
thing, but if it's
extended
gone
out,
for
but you never
years,
saw
then
the
it's a
ramp
clean
and float
slate.
that extended out in the
Okay.
water, and
What's
that's what
the
the
date of
effect
that
the
photo?
pictures would have.
This is from 1993.
And it
93?
didn't have a ramp and a float?
No, it just has the pier.
Well, that's a big difference.
Right.
yeah. Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to table this until the December meeting. And by that time, we'll have enough information to advise the,
I'll second it, I'm the
Applicant.
one that caused it.
No, it's,
okay,
It's
well,
good
you can,
for you to notice.
okay, I move that this matter be tabled to the December 18th meeting, I believe it is, for more information that has been relayed to the applicant.
yeah.
This one
Okay,
here,
and Matt, you're supporting that motion?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Any discussion?
her again. Oh, she's-
All in favor?
Okay,
Okay.
Okay,
all right,
all right,
we got that one.
thank you. You know what we're looking for.
All right, new business.
Okay,
On to the next.
that takes care of the old business. We are now up to new business.
Great.
Item 24-1101 Lawrence Hagerty and owner and Diane Plord, applicant, High Head Road, consideration of an application to build a new residential wharf in a resource protection district.
So I would like to, before I begin, I'd like to make a note that I did send out a memo today regarding this application, just to try to clarify some of the issues regarding the question of a subdivision. We do have, Margaret, we do have copies of that? Yeah.
Yeah, that was
And I'd like to,
the question I had.
I'd like to make certain that that's part of the record. The official record, whatever.
Excellent trees,
Yeah,
too.
that is on the,
Too.
is that included in the website?
It's not in the findings, I don't think it's on the website.
It is, it's on the website.
It is on the
Okay.
website. So I want to make certain that it's included in all of our, in the record.
Yeah,
official
this,
record.
this memo kind of has ramifications for the neighborhood at large,
Yeah.
the High Head company.
Well, and there's other older subdivisions with community docks in Harpswell.
Yes.
I know of at least two.
Okay, well, first, before we even get to that, the one thing that isn't in the findings is a notice about whether the application itself is complete. Are you prepared to say that, Matt?
Yes, I believe that the application is complete.
Okay. So the question, I think, the preliminary question, before we even get to findings, is one that I know Matt and Howard have gone back and forth on. And I would like to hear what your thoughts are on that, before even getting to the merits, what your thoughts are on that concerning the, whether a residential wharf is allowable here.
Right, so this community, the High Head Company, was developed in 1965, and lots were started to get deeded out later that year. And the development was about 70 lots to begin with, based on the original plans. And the original High Head Company had essentially created a community dock for this community. And the bylaws of that yacht club allowed for each individual lot within the community to create certain structures. A ramp and dock are included in that. The question is, however, that because of the number of lots that were split as a result of this, does it count as a subdivision? I did a fairly extensive search through the deeds and through the state law, and it seems like that because this development was created in 1965 and the lots were created before the subdivision laws came into effect, that the High Head community is not a subdivision, and it is not subject to subdivision law. That includes the state law and the local ordinances. So in this case, the provision for community dock is not applicable to the application. They're allowed both by their deed and by state and local law to do so.
So I agree with everything except the last sentence. It is not a subdivision for purposes of the subdivision law. I agree with you. It was incorporated, a plan was filed, and somebody has gone back and looked at the High Head Company plan, which doesn't say subdivision, which is, I think, an important fact. But for purposes of the state subdivision law, for purposes of the DEP guidance document 1000, it is not a subdivision under the subdivision law. Then the issue is, what impact does it have on the provision of the shoreline zoning law that basically says that if you are a lot on a recorded subdivision plan with access to a community dock, you can't build a new dock for just your lot. And there's no question that that's what 15.3.9 says. Should note that 15.3.9 is not part of the state shoreline zone or the guidance from the DEP, from which all of our shoreline zone laws are. So that it has to be approved by the town because it is a stronger provision or more strict provision than the state law. And at some point, that happened. Mark thinks it happened recently, but not, maybe 10 years ago, as opposed to 1974 when the subdivision law came in, or 1992 when the shoreline zoning law came in effect. here. So the issue is, in my mind, what's the impact of something that happened in 2019? And what happened in 2019 was that the owner of the two lots in question, 36 and 37, decided that he wanted to sell the lot 36. But he realized that because of things that had happened in other lots in High Head, that there was some question of whether his lot, which was 37, he owned both lots, whether his lot, 37, complied not with the town standards, but with the High Head setbacks. And-
Which were different.
Which were different, not more.
Not as stringent.
Not as stringent, but different. And his lot, for whatever reason, the house had been built, wasn't in compliance with the High Head standards, it was compliance with the town standards. So he came up with a plan to swap some land in order to make his lot comply with the High Head standards, but didn't change the overall size of lot 36, which is the lot that we're looking at. They then had to decide what to do about that, since it technically was not a subdivision for purposes of the subdivision ordinance. But I don't know whether his advisors told him to come to the town, or the buyer wanted the town to put our stamp on it. But they filed a subdivision amendment approval application in
Even though it wasn't a
2019.
subdivision supposedly.
I'm sorry, a shoreline zoning, no, a subdivision amendment
Yeah, he says right
application for a lot line amendment, which is done with less information, you don't need all the submission requirements. And this came before the planning board in September of 2019, and we, the planning board, not we, but the planning board approved it. Al signed it, and signed a notice of decision, and was recorded in the registry of deeds. I don't know legally what the ramifications of that are. One could take the approach that you could say that by voluntarily submitting the lot to the subdivision ordinance, even though it wasn't required, that he is submitting to the jurisdiction of the subdivision ordinance. The lot in question, and this is a debate that Matt and I had, it's not a new number. It's a new lot, because it's different.
What?
It's different it's not different in size, but it's different in its dimensions. It take a little bit away from lot 37 and added something to lot 36. And took a little from 36 and added, I mean, so it's different. The bottom line is different. And you can look at, the plan is very difficult to read online, but you can look at it and sort of figure it out, what they were trying to do. So then the issue is, what's the impact of that? In the past, you have to look at what also we did in the plan, what the town did with respect to High Head. There are other docks in High Head, because the High Head bylaws allow it. And we apparently didn't question the fact that there was that 15.3.9 applied. We don't know when those other docks were built. We don't know when 15.3.9 was added to the subdivision, to the shoreline zone. Sometime between 1992 and today, but we don't know.
But you're saying,
We could
is it-
probably figure that out. but-
Is it a subdivision or is it not? I mean, basically, to me,
they didn't have to
person on
come,
the, on
they
the
did
street,
not have
it's a
to come.
subdivision, but they didn't have the terminology
They
maybe.
didn't have to come to, we knew what a subdivision was in 1974. And the concept of third lot out in 5 years was pretty well established, and other communities had it. We didn't have it. I think Matt's gone back and looked at the history
Yes.
of the ordinances, and neither he nor Mark think that there was a subdivision ordinance in Harpswell, so that it never came to Harpswell. The people involved, the prior owner of Lot 36 and 37, before he sold 36 to Mr. Hegarty, could have filed a new plan, not calling it a subdivision plan, and cross-deeded each other a description of the areas they were swapping. And it never would have come to the town. It never would have had to come to the town, but it did. And now the issue is, what are we gonna do about it? Because if you look at the way the language reads in the, where it says, "No new wharf, pier, dock, or float shall be constructed on a lot shown on a recorded subdivision plan." So the issue is, what Matt is saying is, well, it's not a subdivision plan. And I'm saying that in fact, it was a recorded subdivision plan. It wasn't a subdivision plan for purposes of the subdivision ordinance. The argument against that is that in addition to the subdivision ordinance defining what a subdivision is, the same definition is in the definitions addendum, which is another ordinance of Harpswell. And it says the same thing. And they both refer to the main statute that defines subdivision, 39A 4401. And consistently that uses the term 1974 as the cutoff date. So the only reason that I suggested going to Amy on this, our town attorney, is there's the issue for us of the fact that the town has approved other docks in High Head, despite the fact that all the lots have access to the community dock. That creates the fact that we may be, if we turn this down, would be selectively enforcing, which
Maybe
I don't.
things shouldn't have gotten approved before, which has
No,
happened.
if Matt's correct, and it's not a subdivision plan
Yep.
recording, then we were correct. But that then has impact on a bunch of other subdivisions that predated 1974. There's one big one on Baywater that has the same issue on Oars Island.
There's a big one in Cuddy's Harbor
And
Road
there's a big one in
that we just disapproved a dock and made them give away land for this.
So when you have impact issues that we have analyzed and we don't know the answer to, that impact a whole lot of different areas of Harpswell, I think it's prudent to take the time to go to Amy and pose the question to her. Matt's done the research. I've done enough research that Matt's memo is fine, along with the rest of the stuff that is in this. She should be able to give us a quick answer before the next meeting. And there's some expense. The town manager either approves that or doesn't. The town manager says, no, we're not going to town attorney, then we'll make a decision. But that would be what I
That's
would,
why we have covered
That's why what?
That's why we have director's coverage, yeah.
Yeah. So, unless, I think this is complicated by more so that the impact of the September 2019 thing, that's what threw me. I think they didn't have to come to us, but they did, and what does that mean from a legal standpoint? Did the lot become? And the other thing is, that's the only provision in the shoreline zone. So it's not a grandfathered lot, it's just a grandfathered for only, if you use that term, it's only taken out of that section by that alone. It's still subject to all the other shoreline zoning provisions, the High Head subdivision. And so for example, anything, the way the Shoreline Zoning Act says, is anything within 250 feet of the water, of the hat, is subject to all of the various provisions of the shoreline zoning law. And this is the only time that I saw that it refers to a subdivision plan. So, I don't know. I think it's something that we should need a little guidance on.
My additional issue with the 2019 plan is that the notice of decision asserts that it is a subdivision,
Yeah,
which I don't think is correct, and I think that
I think you may be right.
that may invalidate that aspect of it. Whether or not the fact that it was mistakenly pushed through has any impact is, I don't believe it does. But if we decide that we need to seek legal counsel on that, then I'm agreeable to it. But I don't believe that it should have an impact myself.
Because that was one of my questions. If this is the only lot that's been filed saying it's a subdivision within High Head, then I think we're putting too much weight on that language if somebody made a mistake.
Well, we made a mistake. The town made a mistake in accepting the application and acting on it.
What is High Head then if it is not a subdivision?
Well, it's a sort of a lowercase subdivision.
What is it?
It's just a homeowners association essentially for a neighborhood.
I kind of look at an association and subdivision as being, like, you have to have a subdivision in order to have an association, but they do have an association over there, I know that.
Yes.
Right.
So I think we should get Amy Chow
I think,
involved.
yeah, this is a
Because
little,
we're throwing this around and,
we're not legal experts.
well, some people are
Some
legal
legal
experts.
No,
Maybe not.
this is a really complicated issue.
It is complicated.
If I can weigh in a little bit, just on the basis of what you've talked about. There are four things that come up to my mind. One is, if the language in the 2019 action was a mistake of law or an error of law, then we can get around that by saying, because of that error, we should not continue to call this a subdivision. Okay? But that's that's a technical question. Did they make an error of law? Because if it was a subdivision, that action in 2019 would put it under the subdivision control ordinance.
Exactly.
Going forward, yes.
Well, they did. We recognized it as a subdivision.
Since it was recognized as a subdivision after the effective date, then
longer
it's subject to
grandfathered.
all of those rules.
Right.
The other question, and I think that's something Amy needs to weigh in on, the question of selective enforcement that you raised is kind of an interesting one, because if you say, okay, we haven't, due to an error of the understanding of the law that we have not enforced that before, does that give us the authority to continue to make the same mistake going forward? This isn't a case of that we're only enforcing the law over here, but we're not enforcing it over here. But it's a question of,
Well, it's a question of fairness. I mean, if
yeah.
there are 10 docks in High Head, and on the 11th, we say, oh, no, we found this provision in the law, and we're not gonna do that, that's pretty selective.
but it's, yeah,
Unless
but
things
if
have
it's,
changed.
but if it's after discovered information, that makes it a little different. But that's something that you could weigh in on as well.
Yeah.
The other thing that I don't think anybody has talked about yet is the fact that in covenant number 3, it says that no structure shall be placed within 75 feet of the right-of-way. No, it's number 2.
Where are you?
First page, what?
Covenant,
Here.
the memo.
Thank you,
Said,
thank you.
And other structures necessary and subsidiary to the
It
same.
does, this application does meet that criteria
Yeah, it does.
for that covenant.
Okay, but my point is that just because the covenant says that you're allowed to have a dock and a ramp, doesn't mean that our ordinances will allow for it.
Absolutely.
Because we have-
Doesn't trump us.
You know, it's one of the things that we've discussed before, that if you have 2 sets of standards, one of which are in the restrictive covenants and one of which are in the ordinance, the stricter of the 2 always applies.
Right.
So the fact that they say, yeah, you know, we don't care if you put in a dock or ramp, that is not binding on us at all. But, you know, the idea of, I agree, I think it's a close enough question that it's something that we should give to Amy.
Great.
Diane, did you have a?
Comment?
Just so you know, person who did that, who was the planner, was Mark Ironman, when that went to the planning board. And Mark Ironman gave us all the emails that Matthew was going through, saying that it's not applicable. So,
He recommended that it goes to me too.
everything he did in 2019, he's saying that it's okay now, in the emails and the report that Matthew came up with.
Yeah.
So maybe Mark has to be spoken to again.
But his position as the town planner is a lot different than that when we're dealing with a legal issue. You know, and I respect a lot of things that he does, but we're talking about a very distinct legal issue that I think needs to be resolved.
Can I speak as the homeowner?
Oh, certainly.
Please.
Please, just
I just
get
want
up and identify yourself.
to
please.
understand a bit. I'm the homeowner, Haggerty of Lot 36. So the theory is that because we may have incorrectly, or Matt Wogan, the previous owner of the lot, had incorrectly petitioned the board to change the line for a few feet, that turned all of High Head into a subdivision?
No, what turns your lot,
A subdivision of 1?
no, it's not a subdivision. The issue is whether it subjected itself to the subdivision law, which you did, which he did.
Which would mean that in order to be subjected to the subdivision law, you would have to be in a subdivision, presumably.
No.
No, you could be subject to the subdivision laws and not be in a subdivision?
Was this something that you were asking for, when you were buying it?
No.
Because you bought it right after the subdivision.
I was involved in the process, but
Yeah.
I think it wasn't anything that I initiated or paid for. He felt that, the previous owner felt that if there was any chance that he was impeding on the setback, that he should,
Fix
so
it.
that the line just moved, as you said, a few feet
Right.
in one place and a few feet in another.
Yeah.
So I'm just confused about this idea of how could it go from a whole, not a subdivision to a subdivision because of such a small change to one lot?
It's
It
the
seems-
time, it's the timing of it, that raises the issue about whether the action that was taken in 2019 was enough to meet the character that is now covered under the.
So the question is whether that small change to a line in one lot could turn High Head into a legal subdivision.
Yeah,
It seems odd at
well,
face value.
yeah, that's kind of the nature of the law, is that there are some things that seem very minuscule but could have some pretty profound consequences. And that's why, you know, we want to make sure that we're doing what is correct here.
And so if it turns out to be a subdivision, there's maybe as many as 20 docks, some very recently built.
Well, that's the question of the fairness of doing it.
Yeah.
And that's why we were gonna ask her that question as well.
So what are the two outcomes? She says, yes, we can no longer allow them, and
You know, she would either say that the subdivision ordinance applies or it doesn't. And at that time, we take a look at it and we say, as
Well, it's that the subdivision, that it's a subdivision plan.
yeah,
That's what she's gonna say, or not say. If she says it's a subdivision plan, then 15.3.9 applies, because it's a recorded subdivision plan. If she says, no, it's not a subdivision because of the definition, then it's not it doesn't apply, period. Then that sort of ties in with all the docs we've approved
Yeah.
prior to that, and she may take that point of view.
May I say?
It's easier for the town.
If an individual lot becomes, for whatever reason, a subdivision, and the other lots have already been sold, and they've already been developed, those other lots appear as part of the subdivision, but those other lots are not subject to any subdivision law. It is only the one lot.
That's
So if it is the case that 2019 subdivision lot line amendment made that lot a subdivision, only those two lots would be subject to the subdivision ordinance and the subdivision law rules. So it wouldn't have any greater impact for the rest of the community at all. It would just be for those two lots.
And it would only apply in the situation that you wanted to make a further change to the lot, to your lot, which you won't, because you don't have the acreage to do it. It's a non-conforming lot. So it doesn't really have any impact except for this issue,
Right.
which is problematic.
I dislike throwing around my credentials. However, I am certified by the state in both legal issues and subdivision. And that's part of my code enforcement training, and I am certified through 2029 for that. In my professional opinion, this is not a subdivision, and that the incorrect approval and permitting as part of the 2019 application does not have any impact on this. Again, if the board is uncomfortable with that, then we can absolutely send it to Amy and we can get her opinion on it.
I guess I would say that I don't think I'm uncomfortable with your opinion. I think it could go either way. I just think that Amy, we go to Amy when there's issues that we can't resolve and that have impact on the town on other areas,
yeah.
not just this particular lot, this particular case. I mean, I don't think we saw any problems other than that, unless I'm reading this wrong, but.
But
No.
it is an interesting point that it only affects these two lots, and that's the only thing that'd be considered a subdivision, yet there's nothing else on Harpswell's books that show those two lots as a subdivision, other than that one filing.
it seems absurd at face value. I'm not a
That's what
lawyer
I
at
said.
all, but it's,
Yeah.
It should have been, the application should not have been taken up
Right.
if it was not but I don't think that, Mark figured that would be the easiest way to make,
and dozens
Your
and dozens of
predecessor
other
had-
applications shouldn't have been taken on and approved.
I'm sorry.
And dozens of other applications, shouldn't have been taken on.
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
We
if,
just
if,
don't know.
if changing the lines on one lot suddenly subjects it to all the rules of subdivision,
Only
seems,
Only your lot,
It wasn't the lines moved, it's the way it was filed.
It was filed
as a subdivision approval.
That's the point, it's not that the lines got moved, they filed it as a subdivision, and that's where the complication. I'm having brain issues with this one.
yeah,
so-
it seems a real stretch, but,
No, and I understand, the logic seems to be missing here.
yes.
But it is a legitimate legal question. And, as much as I respect your certification, and your experience, and you know that. This is a question, was there an error of law made? And that is a question that only, I think, our legal counsel can answer. And I think I know how she's gonna come down, but I don't really want to put us in the position of second guessing what she'll say. So,
Okay.
so be that as it may, what is our recommendation?
Recommendation is that the questions be put to Amy and that we table this for a month till December.
Yep. Is there support for that motion?
Yes.
Courtney, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion 5-0, the motion, this application is tabled until the December meeting, and we'll just get Amy's professional opinion on it. And that will help us going forward to hopefully avoid this kind of an issue in the future. So, sorry to do that to you, but we've got to be extraordinarily careful.
It seems like there's a million little things you could pick when saying it's a question of law. This just seems like a very, very odd one to question. But
Yeah.
it's been decided, so I'm not going to go on.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your patience.
All right.
Okay, that's it for the new business. Is there any other business? We have another meeting coming up next Monday.
Right.
Do you have anything as a planner's update?
No, not this month.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
Nope.
Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.